Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for taking some time here this afternoon. If you would like and share the post, and again, that would help get it out to more people. So, appreciate it if you would do that. If you want to look with me in the book of Luke, we started last week looking at a little booklet I just laid on my desk for a good while, and finally I picked it up and looked to see what it was about, and it's really impressed me. The name of the book is How to Live Through a Bad Day. And I don't remember now if I was having a bad day when I looked at the book or not, but it looks at Christ on the cross and how he dealt with that, and the seven sayings from the cross. Last week we looked at Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, and as the first step in dealing with a bad day, it begins with forgiveness. Most of our bad days are probably directly related to someone. Sometimes it's other events or things that cause it, but usually there's a someone in the story. And so we talked about that for a little bit, about the importance of forgiveness in dealing with a bad day. Today we're going to look, if you have your Bible, look in the book of Luke, chapter 23 with me, and we'll look there, and we're going to look at the next statement, and again, in the process of dealing with a bad day, and that is that we help others who are struggling and having the same problems that we are. In the book of Luke, Jesus, as he was on the cross, said, excuse me, uh, hanging there to the thief, he said, "I say unto you, today you will be with me in paradise." And that is the basis of our discussion this afternoon. Again, we don't know exactly at what point during the crucifixion that Jesus made this statement, but that is, he was hanging there between the two thieves, that at some point during the day, their discussion took place. And at that point, Jesus again told him that he would be with him in paradise that same day. Again, if you remember, there was somewhat of a discussion between the two thieves and then with Jesus himself, as the two thieves got into somewhat of a debate about the uh, the person of Christ and who deserved to be there, and that the one thief saying, we deserve we deserve what we're getting, but this man here, he hasn't done anything wrong. And that was when he turned to Jesus and said, "Remember me when you come into your kingdom." And so, again, what we have is when it started. Again, Jesus probably felt maybe, I remember that commercial, E.F. Hutton, years ago, that, people were sitting there at a tennis match and their head going back and forth. Maybe you've been in that situation before when people were having a conversation around you and you're kind of just back and forth. You're not, you're just kind of listening, not even in the conversation. Well, that's kind of the way this discussion started. Jesus was in the middle, and the two thieves were having this conversation. They were on each side of him. They were having this conversation back and forth. Both of them being thieves, being criminals, and again, Jesus was being crucified in the middle. Obviously, both of them had um, heard of Jesus, had heard of some of the things he had said, some of the claims that he had made, maybe even at some point witnessed some of his miracles, or heard some of his messages. And in some way they knew, either they'd witnessed it, heard about it, some way, somehow they knew who Christ was. One chose, even at that moment, to um, reject Christ, I guess you'd say, to be angry at Christ, really, basically daring him, making, mocking him, ridiculing him for not using his power, supposed power, I guess would be the way he would look at it, of getting them off of the cross. The other thief, the other criminal, he reacts to that, and says, again, not the way the King James writes it, but he basically says, "Hey, have a little respect. Don't you know, who you're talking to? This man doesn't deserve to be here. He hadn't committed any kind of crime, and he certainly doesn't deserve your um, sarcasm, your ridicule. We're getting what we deserve for our actions, but he is innocent. He hasn't done anything." And again, at that point, turns and asks Christ to remember him in His kingdom. And Jesus responds in a great way for you and I. A lot could be said about this statement of Jesus, not just the statement, but you have to consider again the background and where he was when he made this statement. Here is a man again, who is being crucified himself, who has been beaten beyond recognition, and yet he is still ready, willing to give this man who is confessing his shortcomings, confessing his sinfulness. He is willing to give him mercy and show mercy to him. And so, it's a great picture of again the mercy of Jesus Christ, of his willingness um, to accept anybody who is willing to come to him in confession. And as we think about that, again, there's a couple things that, again, when we're dealing with bad days, a couple things to point out. Again, that this thief, this man, was experiencing, he was going through the very same thing that Jesus was. Jesus could have easily ignored both of the criminals. One of the criminals, he could have very easily, because he had his own set of problems to deal with at this point. He had his own torment, he had his own torture. But yet, in the middle of that setting, he shows compassion, he shows mercy to this thief. He's willing, even at this time, to hear the cry of this thief. Second thing, again, is Jesus in that point could have um, easily responded to the thief, responded, could have looked down on him himself. You're right. Yeah, he could have agreed. He could have taken the position that the criminal himself taken. Listen, I didn't do anything. I don't deserve to be here. You're getting what you deserve. Leave me alone. Um, but again, he responds again. He reaches out and acknowledges and listens to the cry um, of this thief. And if you think about it, that's really kind of the two ways. A lot of times, how we deal with bad days. We typically don't have a lot of sympathy during those times on others who are going through bad situations. Sometimes, maybe even worse situations than we are. And we tend to overlook or to be so concerned with our own issues that we have no compassion or willingness to help others. And so Jesus teaches us an extremely, I think, important lesson here today, and that is even in the midst of our struggles and our bad days, we as believers don't isolate ourselves and fail to express and extend mercy and grace to others who are going through similar situations. That we don't become so self absorbed in our situation that we overlook what others are dealing with. I think we need to remember that many times God does, in fact, allow us to have certain experiences in our life to prepare us then to be helpers to others. As believers, as a child of God, you have prayer, you have faith, you have resources that you can rely on to help you through those times. Remember, there are people who are going through similar circumstances to you who don't know Christ. And so you have the opportunity, and I think sometimes God uses these circumstances and situations in our life to help us to learn how to help others, to be able to the pass on assistance and help, to show mercy to other people. And again, sometimes it's really hard to have compassion on people when we haven't been there ourselves. And so we learn, I think, from Christ this important lesson. Again, that even while he was suffering, and I might even make the case here, and I don't think I would be too far off base in making the argument or making the case that Jesus had suffered even more than these two criminals, because we read of the horrendous torture and beatings and ridicule that Christ had experienced during these couple of days since his arrest. And I don't think it takes too much imagination or too much thought to believe that it's very likely that he had been, again, tortured and tormented worse. It appears that for the last day or so now, last few hours, the whole Roman government, their attention had been on Jesus. So it seems unlikely that they had time to really be torturing and beating these other two in such a manner. And so Jesus, you could make the case, was even again in worse condition than these two men, and yet he was willing to hear from this thief. He was willing to listen to this thief. He was willing to show compassion to this thief. And so the challenge for you and I believe, then is that very question: is when we are tossed. I'll use that phrase. I don't know that that adequately describes it, but do we offer again? He offers this man compassion. He offers this man mercy and hope in spite of their similar circumstances. When you and I are having bad days, when things are not going well, do we represent Christ in such a way that others have hope? One of the things for a Christian is that we always have hope. Sometimes, sometimes it may be just a faint flicker, but we have hope. We live with the knowledge that, as Paul says, for me to die is gain. If this situation, if this circumstance I'm going through right now in my life takes me out of this world, I have the confidence, the comfort to know that I will spend eternity with my Lord. Are we sharing that hope with those around us who are dealing with hard times themselves? That's the second lesson we get from the cross. How do we deal with a bad day? We practice forgiveness, even to those who have hurt us, even to those who have caused us pain and suffering. We practice forgiveness. But second of all, we provide hope. We share hope, the good news of Jesus Christ. We offer compassion and care to others who are suffering and struggling along life's way. And that is, I think, the one of the hallmarks, I believe, of a Christian is that even in our darkest hours, we have hope and hope that we are willing to share. Many of you know one of my favorite shows and television shows, and it wasn't an exercise in spirituality. I will uh, acknowledge that right up front. Far from it. In fact, was the show MASH. And I remember one of the episodes, several of the doctors, and I don't remember the whole background. I think I do, but rather than get it wrong, which is not the point of the story, but several of the doctors had gone, um, they were in one of the Army buses and had gone, I think, to pick up some wounded soldiers from somewhere. And on the way back, their bus broke down. And Frank, if you remember Frank from the show MASH, and even if you don't, if you never watched the show, I think this illustration will still resonate with you. Frank was one of the doctors, and Frank was, um, I'll call him a weasel. He was kind of always sneaky and backhanded, underhanded. Um, but Frank was one of the doctors who was stranded on the bus, and they'd been stranded a while. They were hungry and thirsty, and it got dark, and Frank was in the back of the bus hiding, and he had a couple of candy bars, and he would look around, make sure, not, and he'd slip him out and get him a little bite of his candy bar, and didn't share his candy with others. They were all in the same situation. They were all stranded. They were all hungry. Only one of them had food. But rather than share, he was going to keep it all to himself. As believers, we are instructed, we are challenged. We have the model of Jesus Christ to share our candy bar. Share our candy bar with a hungry, hurting world. When people around us, again, they were all in the same bus, all in the same predicament, but he didn't help his brothers. That's not very. And the bad thing is, in that show, he was purported kind of to be the Bible believer or whatever, even though he didn't usually act like it. If we're going to say we're followers of Jesus Christ, we help others, even when we are suffering ourselves. That's one of the ways to help make the most of a bad day. All right. Hope you make the most of the rest of this day. And remember, we've covered two things so far: forgive others, forgive the one that made your day bad, and help others who are having a bad day along with you. Have a great day. We will see you here next Wednesday night.